Tim Moody, President and CEO of Pan Global Resources. Pan Global is a copper-focused exploration company, one of the few in Europe. We have an advanced copper discovery in the Iberian Pyrite Belt, and we're continuing to grow that deposit. And we have a strong portfolio of other targets where we expect to add additional resources. So just starting with this sort of cover picture here, it really tells an important story about where we're located. And so this is a photo taken from very close to our main sort of copper discovery called La Romana, and it's looking across a new target area called Bravo. And as you can see, it's very flat. There's no trees, no lakes, nothing to get in the way. And on the horizon to the left, you can see the Asnocoya and Los Frailes mine dumps. These were two large open pit mines operated by Boliden. This is now held by Grupo Mexico, and they're looking to recommence mining with a new underground development beneath the Los Frailes open pit. Also, just on the horizon is the Las Cruces mine operated by First Quantum, and you can also see some of the infrastructure, the power, etc., that feeds into the city of Seville, which is just 30 minutes drive away from our project. So when it comes to a setting for a potential new mine development, this is what good looks like. Forward-looking statements. Okay, so just a snapshot of the company. I believe we offer potential investors or existing investors a somewhat low risk but high reward opportunity. I say that because we have an advanced copper discovery, as I mentioned. It's one of the few new copper discoveries in Europe that has the potential to be brought into production within a decade, perhaps before the end of this decade. And that's important because that's the period when copper price is expected to be really rising. So a great plus for us. We have the potential for the resource to grow. We have 183 drill holes already. It's about 36,000 metres of drilling, which is quite advanced in other areas as well. We've completed metallurgy tests, etc., showing excellent results. We're also advanced on environmental baseline work and other studies as well. We're continuing to grow our exploration pipeline. We've got, I think, 15 targets as a last count. So plenty of opportunity to add additional resources and make new discoveries. And that's where value can be created very quickly. In addition, as you saw in the previous picture, the infrastructure here is excellent. And when you compare that to where many of the other copper discoveries are being found elsewhere in the world, having something with infrastructure around you, etc., in an area where you can get permitting done pretty quickly, these are huge advantages for where we're located. So you can see on the map on the right, our main project is called Escacena. It's in the south of Spain, just outside of Seville, in the Iberian Pyrite Belt. We do have another project up in the north called Carmenes, and so I'll mention that briefly at the end. Just looking at the location in a bit more detail. So our La Romana copper discovery here, just shown in the sort of centre of this bullseye, and you can see there's at least 3 other potential processing centres within a 40-kilometre radius of our project. And if we expand that to about 50 kilometres, there's at least 5 large operating mines. So in addition to that, there's a smelter which is owned by Freeport. It's about 75 kilometres away from our project. And all of these mines, the infrastructure, etc., are connected by modern roads and power, etc. So this is, again, what good looks like when it comes to a potential new mine development. Really, we are in an advantaged position given our proximities to these other processing centres. Again, just going in a bit closer. So our main project, Escacena, here, about 30 minutes drive outside of the city of Seville. It's our main discovery here. La Romana is in the south of that area. We have a new one as well, just to the north, called Cañada Honda. and our target that we're just preparing for drilling located here about 4 kilometres from 2 large open pits that were previously operated by Boliden. And this is where Grupo Mexico are looking to recommence mining with a new underground development beneath the Los Frailes open pit. But as I say, 30-minute drive, a sealed road going past Las Cruces mine operated by First Quantum, and then going on to past the Grupo Mexico project to Pan Global's discovery. Yeah, so excellent location. I should also mention the Las Cruces mine is up for sale at the moment, and the outcome of that should be known hopefully before the end of the year. So this slide just compares our Escacena project in green here with some of the other mines is shown here in red, and this is looking at depth to mineralisation. And also shown here in blue is some of the other advanced projects in the area. But as you can see here, there's most of these are underground mines. The First Quantum's Las Cruces mine was an large open pit. It was had 150 metres of post-mineral cover over the top of that. But now that's finished the open pit and is now looking to go underground. So starting at about, I think, about 300 metres below surface. Then if you go to the 3 mines which are operated by Sandfire, those are operating between 400 and 800 metres depth. They're all underground. Cerro Colorado, which is operated by Atalaya, that's a large open pit copper mine, and that's the best comparable to what we have in terms of what can be achieved in the Iberian Pyrite Belt. So I'll say a little bit more about that. And then Lundin's Neves Corvo mine in the same area, which is mining currently at about 1.2 kilometres depth. So here we are with copper from surface at our La Romana discovery, open at depth. We've followed it down to about 300 or 400 metres depth, and it's still open. So that means we've got potential. It's a lower cost for exploration. It's also potentially lower cost to mine as well as an open pit development. And just as I say, to compare with Cerro Colorado, the Atalaya mine, that is it's a large open pit mine producing about 50,000 tonnes of copper per annum. And they use a cutoff of 0.15% copper, and they have a reserve grade of about 0.38, 0.39% copper. So that gives you an idea that that's a large, low-cost open pit mine, and it gives us a benchmark as to what can be achieved in the area. So all of the big mines in this area near our project are made up of clusters of deposits. In other words, it's not just a single ore body, but a group of deposits that feed into a common plant. And at the moment, we've got our main discovery here at La Romana, but we have many other targets. This is a gravity anomaly map, but many other targets in this area that suggest that we could find additional deposits. In other words, another cluster of ore bodies. So we don't believe it stops at La Romana. We think the exploration potential here is extremely good. In fact, we've had some evidence of that as we've begun testing another target up the North called Cañada Honda, where we've been getting what could be regarded as potential ore grade and thickness intercepts, but very early days on that. But you'll also see this large target here, a gravity anomaly called Bravo. We only got access to that about 2 months ago, and we're continuing to conduct exploration there and prepare for drilling that we're hoping we can be drilling there before the end of the year. But this is a very exciting target. You can see the comparison of the size of the anomaly with our La Romana discovery, and this is the gravity anomaly that we tested that led to that discovery. You can also see the gravity anomalies is coincident with the 2 open pit mines that were formerly operated by Boliden. So, in fact, Los Frailes, which is a 70 million tonne massive sulfide, was discovered by drilling that gravity anomaly. So this geophysical technique is very effective in the area, and we have lots of targets that are not yet tested at this stage. So looking at our main discovery, our flagship discovery, if you like, La Romana. It's got 183 drill holes at this stage. It's about 36,000 metres of drilling. We've got continuous copper mineralisation over about 1.5 kilometres of strike length. So we've drilled it down to about 400 metres over in the east, and it's still open. And then we've continued to expand the drilling to the west, and it remains open in that direction, and it is open at depth as well, as this long section shows. But most of the drilling here has only been down to about 150 to 200 metres. So this will grow, and the next phase of work will look to expand the deposit further to the west, and also step out down dip as well. And we've got about 5,000 metres of drilling planned to help with the expansion and delineation drilling, and we'll look to come out with a resource perhaps as early as middle of next year, but we'll just see how the drilling progresses and how far the mineralisation continues. The other thing to notice here is the very flat topography. It's again very simple. The geometry of this deposit is also very simple. It's a tabular sheet that sort of very predictable. We intersect the copper at where we expect to just about every time. So a big advantage for us. We've also conducted detailed metallurgy, both for producing a copper concentrate and a tin concentrate, and I'll show you a little bit more about that in a minute. So this long section, I think, it's a new slide that we've included in our deck. It really helps to emphasise that the mineralisation, this deposit will grow, and that the mineralisation is very much open both at depth and along strike. Looking at a couple of cross sections through the deposit. So this is one of the westernmost cross sections. The yellow boxes here just highlighting the most recent drill holes that were reported. So we've got sort of 18 metres at 1.24% copper equivalent here from about 60 metres below surface. It's about 100 metres down dip from the surface here. So we've also, you can see this very shallow 35 to 40 degree dip. That is ideal for an open pit. And we actually think when we step up dip from this hole, we might actually get some even higher grades where we might expect some what they call supergene enrichment at the base of a zone of oxidation. So, this is, as I say, the westernmost cross section. It shows that the copper mineralisation is open at depth and open to the west, supporting the previous slide I just showed. On this figure here on the right, that's more in the centre of the deposit. It's a much thicker section of mineralisation. You've got sort of 52 metres here of nearly 1% copper equivalent. Again, what you can see is that very simple 35 to 40 degree dip, mineralisation open at depth. There's a thin layer of blanket of post-mineral cover over the deposit here, but again, flat topography. We're looking at sort of less than 20 metres thickness of post-mineral cover here. Another thing to notice is that some of the highest grades are closest to surface, and we see that quite often across the deposit as well. So that's also ideal for an open pit situation when you're looking at mining your higher grade early in the mine sequence, which allows you to get payback much faster as well. So, very simple geometry. It's not folded, not faulted, and very consistent right across the deposit. This sort of colourful mosaic here is really sort of a combination of copper, tin, and silver, and the bubbles are what with drill hole intercepts the mineralisation. It's a plan view, and it's showing this red line here is what they call a copper equivalent plus 10 metre percent copper equivalent thickness. It goes up to plus 50 metres, as you saw in the previous cross-section. The thing to notice here is that the mineralisation comes to surface in the south, but we can see it open in a number of areas, particularly off the northeast. ore in the centre here, and also off to the west. As you saw previously, it's open to down dip as well. So just in these 3 boxes, we could see potential to add 10 to 15 million tonnes of additional mineralisation potential resource. So we want to get in there and complete that drilling before we publish a resource. But this will grow. Just again, mention we've completed pretty advanced metallurgy for a project at this stage. In fact, it's sufficient for a pre-feasibility study, certainly adequate for a preliminary economic assessment. This is a long section again, just showing where the samples have been taken for metallurgical variability tests. And importantly, the copper metallurgy test has shown that we can produce. We have, firstly, excellent recoveries, sort of up to 88% copper, when producing concentrate grades from 28 to sort of plus 30%. So that is as good or better than any of the current operating mines in the belt. And that's because of the geology. This is not a classic massive sulfide seafloor type deposit, but something that formed probably subsea floor. So it's coarser grain, doesn't have as much pyrite as a consequence, doesn't have the deleterious metal content that you see in many of the other mines. So we're able to produce a sort of a coarser grain material here with excellent recoveries, a very high concentrate grade relative to all the other mines in the belt, and importantly, without any deleterious or penalty metals, which is a big advantage over all of the other mines in the area. Similarly, with the tin metallurgy, we were not sure how we'd go with recovering the tin. The tin is about 15 to 20% of the in situ value of the deposit. So, if we can recover the tin, that's a very important addition to the economics of the deposit. So, the tin metallurgy work is also very advanced. Again, exceeded all of our expectations using a very simple gravity separation flow sheet. So, 2 to 3 stages of gravity separation. We were able to produce concentrate grades of over 60%, which puts it in the premium range, and also with very high recoveries for this style of mineralisation, getting close to 60%. So, when you consider that most tin mines, copper sulfide tin associated deposits, where tin is the main commodity, get recoveries ranging from 30 to 60%. We're at the top end of that already, and most tin mines are lucky to produce a concentrate grade 50 to 55%, let alone above 60%. So this the tin metallurgy is really excellent and will be a value add to the project economics. All right, so just stepping to about 1 kilometre to the east of our La Romana discovery is the Bravo target. This is, as I say, an area we only got access to about 2 months ago. It's flat, there's no rocks sticking out of the ground, as you can see in the photograph on the top right here. This is a couple of geologists doing sampling out over the area. The figure below is the gravity anomaly image. You can see the gravity anomaly associated with the La Romana discovery, and then you can see the gravity anomaly associated with the Bravo target. We've completed detailed close-based gravity surveying over this in the last 2 months. We've also conducted a detailed soil geochemistry program, and the soil geochemistry, again, given you're looking at with no rock sticking out of the ground, you might not get any response at all. But we're getting a very coherent lead, zinc, and silver anomaly, exactly coincident with the gravity target. So, that's 2 very positive indicators of the potential for copper mineralisation. Add to that the proximity to La Romana. You consider all the geology is dipping in that, the same geology is dipping in that direction towards Bravo target. This is a pretty exciting feature for us. We have an IP survey underway at the moment. Just as soon as that IP survey is completed, we'll look to position the drill rig here. Hopefully we'll have the drill rig on the ground before the end of the year. If not, it'll be early next year. We have been a little affected by the recent rains in Spain, so that's slowing things down a little bit. But yeah, we're very keen to get the drill rig on this just as soon as we can. So very exciting target. Just 4.5 kilometres from Grupo Mexico's project as well. So yeah, it doesn't get much better than that. Right, another discovery we made during the course of this year. It's again another very large gravity anomaly, as you can see in the figure to bottom on the bottom right. It's called Cañada Honda. It's about 3 kilometres long. We've drilled so far just 16 drill holes on the eastern end of this gravity feature, and we're getting some intercepts that could be considered potentially all grades and thicknesses in this area. It includes it's more copper and gold. In contrast to La Romana, which was copper and tin, but we're getting intercepts like 17 metres at 1.6 grams gold, including 11 metres at 2.4 grams gold. Another hole here with more VMS-style copper mineralisation, 14 metres at 0.8% copper, 0.4 grams gold, and some silver as well, including 7 metres of probably over 2% copper equivalent. So for an underground development in the Iberian Pyrite Belt, where we're located, a rule of thumb is you need generally about 1% copper to be economic. So it looks we're getting above those levels. So very positive start at this stage. So just to give you an idea why we're excited about this target, this dark area here is the 0.2% grade shell or wireframe so far around the mineralisation. And we've been intersecting, and that coincides very well with the helicopter electromagnetic anomaly, which also coincides with the gravity anomaly as well. So a thing to notice here is that it's about 3 kilometres long, and most of it as yet is untested. The strongest part of the gravity anomaly coincides with the strongest part of the helicopter electromagnetic target, and this is untested. So we have about 6 drill holes planned to test along this, but at this stage we're just holding off on that because it's a much deeper target. We're talking about 500 to 700 metre deep drill holes to test this, but it's got very large size potential. This is twice the strike length of La Romana at this stage. And just again to emphasise the scale of this, this is the Sotiel Magoyas mine. This is about 40-50 kilometres to the west of us. It's one of the underground mines being operated by Sandfire. It's made up of 5 different ore bodies along the strike length of the deposit. This is again a long section at the same scale as Cañada Honda. So this is over 100 million tonne deposit currently in operation. So this gives you an idea of the scale potential of this target. But at the moment, our focus is La Romana expansion, delineation drilling, testing the new target at Bravo, and then perhaps later in the year in 2025 we'll look at going back and drilling some more holes testing this target. So when you look at at our La Romana discovery, I think it's got a lot going for it. You have the low risk aspect to it is its location, excellent existing infrastructure. We're in an area where you can get mines permitted pretty quickly. So the Andalusia government has set up a task force really to help with fast tracking permitting, offering sort of within 28 months you get your mining permit granted from application through to granting. So that's very quick. It's already been tested and with the Masa de Valverde project, which is one of Atalaya's new mine developments. In addition to that, we've completed 180 drill holes already here, so our ore body knowledge is very high. We've already completed detailed metallurgy, etc. These are all de-risking features, but they're adding value as well. So as you saw, the potential here for this to grow significantly from where it is already. it's already 1.45 kilometres long. It's already got some pretty good size potential, and it's clearly got room to grow. So just turning to another project we've got, it was an opportunity, just as the Escacena project was when we first went there. So this is a project up in northern Spain, about 55 to 60 kilometres north of the city of Leon. It's an historic mining area. We own the area 100%. It's got some old mine workings there, which were mining or extracting copper and cobalt concentrates, both of which had some nickel with them. They had a smelter up there, etc. And what's attracted us here is these are breccia pipes or pipe-like bodies that have unusual high grades of copper, nickel, cobalt, and as we're finding, also precious metals as well. So given that these are essentially untested, not been drilled, and the mining only went to fairly shallow depths, we think the potential here is very good, because this type of mineralisation, again, typically forms in clusters. So you find one, you'll find there's likely to be others in the area. But the grades and the size of these breccia pipes is really very compelling, and it's a very low-cost test to initially. We've been covering the area with detailed soil geochemistry and geological mapping, etc. We've got underground sampling underway, etc. So already from the underground sampling at the Providencia breccia pipe, the 22 samples collected so far with grades of average for those 22 samples, 2.5% copper, 1.3% nickel, plus some cobalt, gold, etc. So, unusual but very high grades already from the underground sampling. So we're looking at 2 to 3 drill holes at Providencia initially, less than 500 metres of drilling to test that. Not an expensive test at all. Another target, a breccia pipe called Profunda. Again, an area of mining that went a bit deeper here, down to 260 metres. We've just had a team in doing some more sampling, getting into deeper levels of the mine, so we've got more results to report from here. But the 8 samples collected so far from the underground have averaged 10% copper, 0.2% nickel, again some cobalt, gold and silver, etc. So again, these sort of unusual high grades, but pretty exciting targets really. And we think that this soil geochemistry program, etc., is going to help identify additional breccia pipes as well. Okay, so we've got about 15 other targets, as I say, that we could go and test tomorrow, but we're very much focused on our drilling to expand and delineate the resource at La Romana. We have about 5,000 metres drilling earmarked for that. For the drilling at the Bravo target, once we complete the ground geophysics, we're looking at perhaps another 5 drill holes there. We've earmarked about 1,500 metres of drilling for that target. But we have, as I say, many other targets that we'll look to get to during the course of the next 12 to 24 months. But look, whilst we think we have the potential for a standalone copper project at La Romana, we think that for us to compete with some of the other bigger mining operators in the area, we should try and find additional resources. So testing some of these other targets like Bravo to try and give us a much bigger scale. And we've set here a fairly ambitious target of 100 million tonnes, not in 2025, but through exploration over the next couple of years or so. And I think we can achieve that because of the number and quality of targets that we have to test outside of La Romana. As you saw, La Romana will grow based on the work that we've done so far. So I think this is a big target for us that would compare it with some of the other big operators, but we have the targets and the expertise to take us there. So just on the capital structure of the company, we have about 300 million shares out. Insiders own about 7% currently. That increases to nearly 14% on a fully diluted basis. We've just completed a financing, very successful financing. We announced that we were looking for 3 million Canadian. We ended up closing at about 7.2 million. So we were oversubscribed, and importantly, two new investors, a Spanish private company from the mining industries, took a strategic placement in the company. We've also welcomed investment by Conwave, which is one of the largest resource-focused funds in Europe. We're very pleased now with that response. We've got money in the bank to get on and complete all the drilling that I outlined earlier in the presentation, and also enable us to perhaps test some of the other targets in the area as well. So we should also note that we have analyst coverage by SCP. They have a price target of 75 cents. So our current share price is about 12 to 12 cents. So I think at this price, we represent excellent value, or a compelling opportunity for those interested in investing in the company. A catalyst for the year, we've been hitting most of the things we were aiming to, with releasing the metallurgy, etc., the ongoing drilling at Romana, etc. But there's a lot of news to look forward to over the next 3 to 6 months. We've got the Bravo drilling. Just as soon as we can get the geophysics completed and get the drill rig on the ground. We've got the Laramanics drilling, looking to delineate the resource, etc. And it'd be really exciting to see how big this is going to grow. And then we've got, hopefully, best efforts to try and get the mineral resource out, and a PEA to either together with the mineral resource or soon thereafter as well. We've also got the ongoing exploration on the many other targets that we've got. In particular, say the Carmenes project up in the north. And also, I should mention that we are bidding on some other areas. So some areas adjoining our Escacena project, where we have a Romana discovery. We'll hopefully get the outcome of that over the next sort of three months or thereabouts. But that could double our land area if we're successful with those bids, and give us access to a whole suite of new targets. So, there's a lot to look forward to. So I think Pan Global has many ways to win, as we say, and I think we represent a compelling investment opportunity for those interested in copper explorers.
All right, so Tim, I think first of all, could you I think it's crucial actually for you to highlight your background in the region where you're working now throughout your career. Talk a bit about that.
Yeah, thanks, Gorm. So I've been in the mining industry for nearly 40 years. I spent 24 years with Rio Tinto, 18 years in exploration. I was director of exploration, and the last 6 years with Rio Tinto, I was the director and VP of business development in London, looking at large M&A and corporate strategy, etc. But during my time in exploration, I was fortunate to have made a number of discoveries. These are particularly copper deposits that have gone on to become mines. So, Mina Justa, for example, in Peru, the Constancia porphyry copper deposit, we drilled the first holes on that, and also in Peru, which is now being operated by Hud Bay. What else? So I've had a very fortunate career, and I've made a number of important discoveries in different parts of the world. Importantly, during a period of my time in exploration with Rio Tinto, I was running the exploration for Rio Tinto in Spain and Portugal. I was asked to come in and run the program just after the Las Cruces deposit was discovered. My team, when we were doing the exploration in the Iberian Pyrite Belt, made a couple of other discoveries. The Castillejito VMS deposit, for example, that's now been put into production. In fact, the mine is completed. that ended up being part of the Aguas Tenidas mining complex where Sandfire are currently operating. But so, I have a deep knowledge of the Iberian Pyrite Belt, and that really was, I think, pretty critical to the exploration success we've had so far at the Escacena project, and why I think we're going to have more success there as well.
Excellent. So Tim, we always like to ask as well. I mean, how much investment do you have personally in the company? Shares right now, excluding options.
Yeah, I have about 6 million shares in the company. So I'm very invested in the outcome, and I've participated in most of the financings, etc. I've bought in the market as well. So
just on the ground in Spain, how is the company managed?
Yeah, so we have. I didn't mention the team, and I'm glad you've raised that. So we have, again, a little bit different to many exploration companies, junior exploration companies, in that we have 3 mining engineers on the team. The general manager, Juan Garcia Valador, is also an ex-Rio Tinto person. He's a mining engineer, taken projects from pre-resource right through to mine closure. He's Spanish. He knows the system very well. That was a deliberate move to get someone with his qualifications to come in and help run the project and take it forward. Because we see that the La Romana deposit will be a mine at some point, and we need that sort of background, that expertise to help carry the project forward. We do have 2 other mining engineers, as well as a team of geologists, sort of 6 geologists, again with international experience as well. So we have the skill set to be able to take the project right through to production if we have to. And add to that our board. We have I think a top shelf board for a small company. Again, a lot of big company background. We've got Patrick Evans, Patrick Downey, both also mine finders, well-known people in the industry. Corinne Smith, who's works for Newmont, again brings metal sales, etc. experience to us. So again, from the board, it covers the full suite. So we have the depth of expertise to both see a mine through to development, but also manage any M&A that might come our way as well. And we expect that the more we find, the more likely we'll be approached by bigger companies on the back of any further success.
So in terms of the shareholder structure, we saw it in the presentation, right? But I think the most important thing for me here is that you speak a bit more about the recent raise, and we'll touch upon the warrants that are already outstanding. Can you break down who participated in this raise? Because I know we look at the share price, and we're going to get back to this later.
Yeah.
It has not gone well in the last 12 to 18 months, partially because of a poorly structured financing last time. So we'll leave that there, but the current financing, how was it structured? Who participated? What you mentioned, Conwave, you mentioned the Spanish private company. You can share more details if you want about them. Yeah. How much did they put in, and what is the loose hands portion, so to speak?
Yeah, so most of it was institutions, or particularly the two that I mentioned, the Spanish investor and Conwave. Those 2 alone took sort of more than about half the amount that was finally raised. Over 80% of the investors on this raise were from Europe. Some of it was institutions that were already invested in the company, have topped up, and some were high net worth. There's a couple of sort of retail investors, perhaps you'd put them in the high net worth range as well. And then those that were not from Europe, again, were mainly some high net worths and institutions that have continued to follow on with their investments in the company. So these are, by and large, long investors. They're not the type of investor that tend to sort of flip, which is what we saw perhaps with the previous financing, where we saw perhaps having the addition of warrants hurt us rather than helped us.
Yes. So in this financing, did you utilize any of the brokerage houses at all? Because I know that the last time it was a fully through a broker. They raised all of the money through their networks, which we tend to be actually quite damaging, generally speaking, nowadays. Uh,
Yeah, not exactly, Gorm. So we did have the assistance of one broker, but yeah, the large Spanish investor we that was something that we brought in directly. So there was a portion. It was a non-brokered financing, so yeah, we didn't pin ourselves to one or the other, but we did use one broker this time as opposed to several like we've done previously. Um, but that said, we've also had just half a warrant this time. But I think, Gorm, one of the things that we've deliberately tried to do is to increase our investor base in Europe. And I think that's what this latest financing has shown we've been successful somewhat in doing that by attracting more investment from that part of the world, particularly from the Spanish investors. The previous financing was a non-brokered financing as well. So we went to the brokers that we had helped us with previous financings, which is sort of the etiquette. Um, but I'm not sure that certainly makes it more complicated when you're dealing with more brokers. But it was a non-brokered financing, so there's a finder's fee with that, etc. But we had a full warrant with those as well. So it had a greater proportion, I guess, of investors from say Canada, which is what we see sometimes in Canada is that people sell the shares after the financing and keep the warrants, um,
yeah, I mean,
which
people
is
certainly do that in Europe too. So,
yeah,
I'm not too fussed about the jurisdiction necessarily. I think
yeah,
it matters who you got in, and it sounds like this time I mean, you raised over seven, just over seven. It sounds like, and
yeah.
please confirm, 4 to 5, probably upwards of 5 was institutional investors, or this Spanish company as well.
Uh,
Is that correct?
I would say probably more than five, probably closer to six was institutional.
So meaning that you only raised a million and a half from net smaller groups of investors, right?
Yeah, which
So to
includes some
speak.
high net worths that have been investors in the company for a long time. So
Right.
um,
So it's a very tight financing, and I think it's very important to highlight here because people, and we'll get back to this, can observe what has happened with the share price in the
yeah,
last 12 to 18 months. This is a very pivotal moment for Pan Global. You need to have strong backers come in now, and you need to turn the story around here. And we'll get back to how that's gonna be
yeah,
done. You've covered it sort of initially in the presentation here. So that's all well and good. And more importantly as well, the amount of warrants is this sort of potential for warrant selling with this tranche of warrants being issued is quite small then, because
I think
we know
that's
that
right.
most institutions cannot really act that way when they go in. It tarnishes their reputation. So you have maybe, let's say, a million in float from sort of retail high net worths that could potentially act in that regard. So warrant hangover should be small,
Yeah,
I would
no,
presume.
you're absolutely right. So I think you're encouraging that it was follow-on investments from the those that weren't institutions, but also some of the institutions. So we don't expect to see that sort of selling off from like we saw perhaps last time, just to keep the
Yeah.
warrants. These are people who are invested because they like the story, they like what we're doing, and they can see the potential. So yeah, that that selling off hurts, doesn't help. So
Yeah, I mean, it can completely ruin the company. So it's crucial. I guess I want to cover as well the just briefly just highlight what's the financial position going to, what is it like now just after the close. We get that
yeah, I
sort of
think in the
set.
presentation it showed 7.5 or something like that. It's probably closer to 8, but 8 million in the bank. We are a pretty lean organisation. Our overheads are very low. Most of the money goes in the ground. So
What's the overheads per
yeah,
year?
so it's
G&A,
about
no activity.
on 250 to 350 Canadian a month. That's without drilling. So probably closer to 300 or even a bit less than that per month. That's so it's a pretty low cost operation. Um, The drilling is generally our biggest cost.
Wait, sorry. So you're saying 250,000 Canadian per month?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're. I mean, it's a fairly substantial bleed. So you need to get things done quite quickly in that case.
Well, we've got a team. You need a team of people to do that. We only have two people in Canada, myself and in Bristol, but then we have a team of geologists and the mining engineers. So yeah, it's not a big team.
Okay. I guess let's
And
get
that's
into the SCAS.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we don't have we have a, a pretty humble office in Spain, and as I say, it's a small shared office in Canada. So we're not living in fancy buildings or anything like that.
And when you're saying 250K per month, how much of that is salary? And I mean, what's sort of the breakdown per annum if you put on an annual basis as well, holding costs and so on?
If on that amount I just said, about a third, it would be salaries.
And two-thirds, the remaining two-thirds.
Well, office costs, and then you got just general running costs, etc. So legal,
Okay.
etc., mineral rights, and so on.
And okay, so mineral rights should be about 20% or something like this.
Less than that. Yeah.
Okay. But I guess you gave a pretty good sort of regional setting for the Escacena project.
Yeah.
Could you just quickly mention the history of the land package, maybe pertaining to your career? I mean, how were you aware of it? How did you guys acquire it?
Yeah. So I mentioned that during my career with Rio Tinto, I was running the exploration program in Spain and Portugal for the company, not just the Iberian Pyrite Belt. That was the focus. Um, so with the Las Cruces discovery being a Rio Tinto discovery, we were looking at all the exploration around that deposit. So I knew that area very well near where we've made the discovery. But at the time, when I was working for Rio Tinto, it was held by Boliden. So Boliden, they got the property after a company called Exxon had done some early exploration. They were the only ones who really did any exploration there, and that was back in the early 1980s. So when Exxon left, Boliden had the ground, but their focus was on Asnocoya and Los Frailes and expanding and putting into production the Los Frailes deposit, because that was the discovery that they made. But then they had a tailings dam failure in 1999, I think it was, thereabouts. So that put an end to all of the any thoughts of exploration. My understanding is they were about to start doing some more exploration in that area. So, but it's basically the tailings dam failure put an end to not only the exploration, but it led to Boliden leaving Spain altogether. So it then was a number of years before that area was then became available again. The area over the mines went to a public bid, and that's how Grupo Mexico got that area. So the government was looking to see mining recommence in that area. But the rest of the area eventually was made available. The first area I acquired was held by a couple of geologists, one of whom used to work for me when I worked for Rio Tinto. And then there was another area joining that. We negotiated to purchase that as well. So that was how we acquired the land. But it was the knowledge that, and not everyone would be aware of this sort of history because of the ownership, etc., that it remained unexplored, even though there were two big discoveries made nearby, including Los Frailes and Las Cruces. So I think that knowledge was quite critical. The other thing was that we acquired some of the old Boliden Exxon exploration information, which was not in the public domain, not in the public file system. So that also gave us an advantage and helped us to select the initial target, which was La Romana. And of course, our first drill holes on our first target were at La Romana, and they were discovery holes. We had something like 25 metres of 1.5% copper from 30 or 40 metres below surface. So, yeah, that's the history.
Okay, that's good. And you gave a pretty good overview of the companies in the district. I guess just to highlight, all of these companies are sort of committed to the district and continuing to investing in the district, except First Quantum, who's now selling
Yeah,
the project. But that's understandable when you think about their position and so on. But there are several credible suitors in the future that would be interested in the Escacena VMS cluster here potentially, if you prove it up to be
yeah,
a bit larger scale to highlight.
yeah. So I mean, just to highlight, we are looking for big. We've got a lot of big company background in Pan Global. So yeah, we're looking for bigger things that are going to really create value for the company. So, um, but yeah, some of the next nearest is opposite Grupo Mexico, which are waiting for the final permit for them to commence construction of the new underground development. So for those who are not familiar with Grupo Mexico, that's the third or fourth largest copper producer in the world. So they're pretty big. And here we have copper right next door to them. I expect our concentrate will be better quality than what they'll be able to produce. So yeah, there's a good reason why they'd want to be interested in what we've got. Um, and then just to the east is Las Cruces, which is for sale. The outcome of that, as I said, we should be by the end of the year, but we're obviously not running that process. It's interesting. It looks like it could be the companies that are likely to be the new owner are from outside of the area, but again, there's nothing public about that. But again, we see that as perhaps a positive catalyst for us too. So one is the announcement of who the new owner of Las Cruces will be, given our proximity, and secondly will be the announcement of or Group of Mexico getting their final permit to commence construction. Those are two important, I think, price points for investors to be aware of. But the other operators is obviously Sandfire. So Sandfire purchased the three mines and a big land package from Trafigura and Mubadala a couple of years ago for what 1.9 billion dollars. So pretty big commitment from them, and we know that they've got a much bigger exploration mindset. In fact, they've poached the former vice president of exploration from Pan Global, Jim Royal, so he's joined them. So so they're very much committed to the area. I think that's probably their biggest operation anywhere in the world at the moment, or must be close to it, with three operating mines. There's Atalaya, who are listed in the London Exchange. They're the only sort of large copper-focused open pit mining operation, but they're expanding, going underground in a couple of areas. They have a new mine developed, Massa de Valverde. Obviously, very committed. All their projects, all their mining operations are in Spain. There are a couple of private operators and other sort of junior explorers in the area. But further west, if you go into Portugal, in the same geology, is Lundin. There are some rumours that they may be selling their share, but again, it's nothing public. But they've been there for a number of years. It's been a pretty important mine. It's a fabulous deposit. And then there's also the Aljustrel mine, which is operated by Almina, which is a private Portuguese company. But again, Portugal is very active with exploration as well.
So, could you highlight any recent M&A, I guess, in the region, and what other sort of similar stage deposits would you say would be comparable in the region, just for context, to La Romana currently?
Well, there's no other copper-focused, copper discovery as such. There are things like Emerita has La Romanera, which is polymetallic, what they call the complex ores, more lead, zinc with a little bit of copper, some precious metals and so on. That's it's near the Spanish-Portuguese border. That's already has a resource published, but as I say, it's not really a copper company. Probably more likely an underground development. Then we go, I guess, in terms of recent M&A, there's Daenerys as well. Have been working on, on the Lamera Poyatas deposit, sort of, I guess, complex metallurgically to extract the gold from that gold-rich VMS system. But that's I'm not sure how active they are on that at the present moment. What else? In terms of recent M&A, well, I mentioned Sandfire just 2 years ago. That's a pretty big pretty big bite to spend 1.8, 1.9 billion to buy that.
But it's not like it's quite growth going forward. Most of these the major operations, they're going deeper. Generally speaking, they're
they're
not
going deeper. Yeah,
they're not generating a lot of new discoveries themselves. Is what it sounds like. So if they want to get something more shallow, lightweight to grow their operations in the Iberian Pyrite Belt,
I think
there are
we're
not too
best
many
positioned.
alternatives.
Yeah, I think we're probably the best positioned of all of them. We've got that window, that bit of land that's right on the edge of the shallow, where the cover is most shallow. And I mentioned it's sort of a unique situation given that it remained unexplored since the early 1980s.
Yeah.
Everywhere else in the Iberian Pyrite Belt, if there were rocks sticking out of the ground and there was some copper or lead or whatever, the Romans would have found it. So you see the area dotted with old Roman mine workings. But when you had a layer of cover, the Romans didn't have the technology, obviously. So to have an area with shallow cover that essentially remained unexplored for 30, 40 years is a real significant advantage for Pan Global's exploration position. And if we're successful with these public bids that we're participating in, that could really expand that footprint again in areas that are essentially unexplored under shallow cover.
And we'll get back to that and also sort of the broader strategy. But just briefly, some more details here. So just the general drilling cost at Escacena and the lab times of these parameters, what you're expecting into next year and what you've seen so far.
Yeah, so it's about $180, $200 a meter, thereabouts. That's with everything, with water, costs and so on.
And what dollars are we speaking of?
Canadian. So so it's not an expensive drilling environment compared to, say, North America or so on. All the drillers go and sleep in their own bed each night. There's no remote camps or anything like that. You drive the drill rigs generally up to most of the targets. So, drilling costs are pretty low in general. So the topography is pretty flat. It's pretty accessible country. So.
And lab times and advance rates, generally speaking.
Yeah, lab time's 3 to 6 weeks generally. So you can get it accelerated if need be. Things are more normal again now. So, closer to 3 weeks generally. It depends if you've got over limit or, as we often do with our drill core, etc., at La Romana, assay for tin. That can sometimes take a little bit longer. But, it's pretty normal, if not better than many other parts. There's ALS, who is the laboratory we use for most of our work. They're an international laboratory. They have an office in Seville, which, so 30 minutes drive from us.
Yeah. And then with the advanced rates, you're going to start drilling at Bravo. You've obviously drilled a lot into La Romana, so you know what to expect in terms of how quickly you can get holes done. What would you expect to see now when you're starting?
Well, I think within the next 6 months, we should be able to complete the 5,000 metres or so we're looking at. So, I didn't mention the average hole depth at La Romana is about 200 metres. So, and most of the western 2/3 of it is we've only drilled down to about 150 metres depth. So,
on a unit basis, what's the daily run? What's the daily advance rate? Is it like 40, 50 meters?
Yeah, about daily we can get 50 to 60 metres a day. So that's what we're seeing, quite common. So sometimes it's better than that. But if you start drilling deeper, sort of plus 400 metres, the drilling rate goes down.
And I guess we should just kind of touch upon this again. So La Romana, you've drilled a lot into La Romana.
Yes.
And I think now you want to sort of do the last leg of drilling. Probably it depends on what you see. Obviously, there's some permutations where maybe it continues to open up and it's warranted to drill a bit more or something like this. But in the best case, you're doing 5,000 meters, and that's the idea. That's going to be sufficient to put out a maiden resource that you feel like would be a good resource to showcase what La Romana is to the market. Yeah, what would you say is the all-in cost for this exercise? Doing this drilling, doing the resource, sort of getting La Romana to that stage?
Yeah, well, in terms of precise numbers, I haven't got the figures right in front of me, but and we're still sort of finessing some of the drill positions, and we'll obviously need to see how the drilling
Yeah,
advances.
but broad strokes.
Well, what are we looking at? When we do the sums, if you like. Let's see.
Should be a million Canadian, right, to
Yeah,
start for the
yeah,
drilling.
yeah.
5K times 200.
So yeah, something like that. Maybe 1.5 million to complete, because some of the drilling might go a bit deeper. But but yeah, something of that order. I mean, we
And resource.
sorry.
And the resource, I mean, you already have all of the data in house, so that shouldn't be
Yeah,
you
so
don't need a consultancy to do that.
as I showed in the presentation, there's a sort of a fairly detailed block model, long section, and that's gives you an idea. That's actually blocked down to 5 by 5 meters, so it is a pretty detailed model. If we were to publish a resource today, most of the deposit would be in the measured and indicated category. So the drilling that we've got planned now to sort of step out further to the west and down dip, focusing on the shallow potential material that will fall within an open pit. We don't need to drill it at the same density. You drill it to at least inferred. So we'll look to step out where we can, but we recognise that the wider space you drill, the more chance you have of missing some high grade sections. What we've seen is as we drill closer density, the grade tends to go up.
Sure, but I mean, now you've proven that, right?
Yeah.
With La Romana, so I think the market would be persuaded to probably give you some credibility in terms of assuming that it will be the same case for the wider ore body.
Yeah, yeah. But look, I think about 5,000 meters it will get us pretty close to what we need to get us comfortable to put out a resource. As I said,
you expect that to be commenced before year end, very very imminently, or what's the timeline? You say sort of half year point next year. This should definitely be done.
Well, I didn't say definitely. Best efforts. So.
Yeah, so are you guys going to use one or two rigs to do the step out and drilling?
Well, initially one rig, and we'll see. The problem, Gorm, is that the market has been so difficult. Well, I guess we're going to have a discussion about that. The market has been very unresponsive to good news, not just for us, for generally.
Well, so we'll get back to that a bit later. I don't want to get bogged down into that right now. Now we just need to establish. I mean, you're saying the advance rate is 50 meters per day. You have 150 or 160 days to the half year point. So that's comfortably, if you have that advance rate, one rig can accomplish 5K meters. Yeah. So when do you expect to start drilling with the first rig at La Romana?
Yeah, so we're hoping to actually have the rig on Bravo first before we move to La Romana. If it looks like the geophysics is being affected a bit by the recent rains, which Spain's been experiencing a lot of rain, as most people will be aware of the floods, etc. So that just slows things down a little bit. So if it looks like that's being delayed, we'll probably start at La Romana. So that we should have a drill rig turning before the end of the year. And if things start to pick up, we'll look to add a second drill rig.
So you're going to split one rig at La Romana and one at Bravo. Obviously, you're not gonna
potentially, yes. I mean, the 5 drill holes initially at Bravo could, we're talking 1,500 meters. That could go very quickly. So we were going. That's why I said we were going to start there, but and then move the rig to La Romana. But I think we'll look, if things continue to be delayed a little bit because of the weather, we might just start drilling at La Romana, and perhaps we'll consider. If we've got the drill rig turning there, we'll probably bring a second rig in.
Yeah.
For Bravo.
Right. And just to speak, I mean, you touched upon La Romana's metallurgy and so on. It's solid. You've done probably more work than you might have needed to at this stage, but you've de-risked that significantly. And I don't think more work needs to be done there at this point. And right. I think it's credible. So we don't need to dig into that. You've done a good job there. If we just outline your current view on La Romana right now, what would you think the strip ratio is? Just ballpark. Obviously, you don't have a resource, but if you just give people a sense.
Yeah, well, look, I think given the simplicity of it, etc., that we can really push the cutoff grades here to pretty low. So that could get us down to +4 to 1. So obviously we can start on some of the better grades given the grade distribution, etc., that we're seeing. But we could potentially push it to +4 to 1.
Right. And you would envision the pit depth to remain sort of similar as what you're showcasing now in the presentation,
Well,
say
I think
250 meters.
yeah. So I mean, obviously the thickness varies a little bit. So and it also depends on what we see in the hanging wall and footwall, because although
Yeah.
it's the main body of the mineralisation, sort of a fairly consistent thing, covers averages around 20 metres or so thereabouts thickness, but up to 50 down to sort of a few metres, typical for these things. We do have another layer beneath that that actually comes very close to the main layer in the centre of the deposit. So that would fall in the resource as well. But we're also seeing some copper in the hanging wall in places as well. So that would also, some of that actually we need to follow up, because it could be perhaps a higher layer as well. It could be quite important for a resource.
And then could you speak to your thinking around cutoffs? What do you think is reasonable with the information you have now? You have the average grades, you have the pretty good metallurgical information. What cutoffs? And you have a sort of a morphology, a good morphology, shallow, not excessive pit strip ratio. So what cutoff do you think makes sense? Maybe you can use some analogy to support it.
Yeah, so I guess a 0.25 would be a pretty comfortable cutoff for this. So, but you compare that with, say, Cerro Colorado, which is Atalaya's open pit. They use 0.15%, but their metallurgy is not as good. Yes, they have a plant already there, but we have simplicity on our side. It's flat topography, very predictable. All of these things. The metallurgy is a real winner for us. So, I think 0.2, 0.25 would be comfortable. Could we go below that? Potentially, yes. Could we start pushing to 0.15? Yeah. I mein, the
right.
difference, let's say, if you look at the metallurgy, Atalaya have been reporting concentrate grades of below 22% copper. We're looking at 28% to plus 30%. That's a big difference. And add to that, no penalty elements. So the value, that sort of flows back into what you can, into cutoff grades. That's why the metallurgy is really a really important element to what we've been doing.
Certainly, certainly is. I think I wanted to ask as well, with the cutoff you mentioned in mind, and obviously this is a moving target because you're now drilling 5,000 meters, and we don't know how that's going to go. But what would be your expectation of a range for the initial resource, assuming you were going to pick, say, 0.25 or something like this? What sort of tonnage would you like to hope to achieve? And you can give a range.
I think
some expectation.
SCP and their analyst coverage have given some numbers. I think they've got around 15 million tonnes or something like that. I think we'll exceed that. 20 to 30 million tonnes. That's with what we've got at the moment. Again, depending on cut-offs and so on. But I think once we've completed this next phase of drilling, and that was the importance of showing that new long section, the likelihood that this could add materially to that with the next phase of drilling is pretty good. So could we be getting to 40 to 50? That would be great if we can get somewhere like that. But there's certainly the space to do it. And the mineralisation's open, as I say, 2/3 of the deposit, as most of the drilling has only gone down to 150 to 200 metres, your maximum depth, and it's still
open. But I mean, now we're not speaking of the hypothetical. Of course, this deposit is going to continue to depth, but now we're speaking within an open pit constrained resource. So if you do another, if we look, you've done 30,000 meters of drilling so far to delineate. Let's say the SCP is correct. Say 15, 20 million tons. Doing 5,000 meters, you cannot expect a doubling in global resource. say from there.
No, we
Then
could
you
add
would have to step up.
50%. Yeah, could add 50%. It's still growing. I mean, you can if
So
you
you think 20 holes, 20 to say 25
30
holes
holes, yeah,
could achieve that?
30 holes, something like that. Yeah.
Right. So
Well, well,
what would be the average step out? You think? I mean, with these holes.
yeah, it's going to vary a little bit. We've got a couple of logistics things, but some places we'll be looking at 100-meter steps. Yeah, you don't want to go too much further than that, but we may in some instances. So the
Okay.
first, so particularly as we go deeper, we don't want to sort of start step too far. We want to sort of follow the mineralisation as well.
What's the reasoning for going deeper? Because if you venture below the average depth currently, it would be very difficult to include that into the new open pit because
Yeah,
you don't have continuity of that depth.
I'm not sure how you've drawn that conclusion. We don't think we've got to the potential pit depths for most of the deposit. Only in the eastern third, we've chased it down to 300 or 400 metres, and we can pull the pit down to that depth in that area. The grade looks to be actually getting better to the west. So we think we can, with most, as I say, drilling down to 150 metres depth, the open pit limit could be 300 metres.
Yeah, I mean that's true, but also strip increases significantly once you go deeper and so on.
Well, that's right. You can't avoid that. But what I'm saying is that the drilling to 300 metres depth doesn't necessarily take it outside the range for an open pit.
So if you split the 5K meters, how much is spent on stepping to depth, and how much is spent on stepping out along the resources strike and the width?
Yeah, so the prioritisation is such that we've been focusing on the near, hence the down to 150 metres, has been focused on that top 150 metres. So that's been pushing our drilling to the west. If you might recall, Gorm, that we only got access to half the target about a year ago. It was a big farm that we had to get access to. We got access to that. We've grown the deposit sort of more than 30% since then. So we think it's still growing. The geophysics is telling us we could have another 300 or 400 metres of strike extent. So we've still got a way to go. And then if you add another 100 metres to the depth, down to say 250 metres, then we're talking about pretty material addition to the overall size of the deposit.
Okay, and do you think it's realistic to expect that can be done with 5,000 meters?
Well, it's going to get us very close to it, yes. If it's still open, it's very likely that the mineralisation will be still open beyond that at depth. But I expect we'll know what the western extent will be. So that's an important area. And then it's a case of focusing where the down dip extensions following the mineralisation, because it's not, as you saw in the long section, there are some tendencies for higher grades in the sort of near steep zones. So we'll look to follow those as well.
And what sort of spacing would you require to put something into inferred category? What's your expectation?
Yes, given the consistency of the deposit, I think 100 metre by 50 would probably be okay. So we've been drilling at 50 by 50 in some areas, 50 by 25 in the top sort of 75 metres in some areas, not everywhere, but in some areas. But we may be able to push it further. But, I'm just also conscious that within 100 by 100 metre, you can miss a high grade section. You won't change the volume that much, but you will change the grade. And our drilling is, as I said, very clearly shown that when we drill closer, we find we increase the grade without decreasing or affecting the tonnage.
What I wanted to sort of ask, I mean, you mentioned that you just got access to be able to work Bravo. You've known about this target for many years. Could you, don't take too long, but just explain why you have not been able to gain access to it? Because just looking at the baseline data now, it looks like if you would have had the pick initially, you would probably start at Bravo and not start at La Romana.
Well, certainly,
back then.
La Romana had a couple of old Exxon drill holes, big, 500 metre space holes that they drilled that hit some mineralisation. So we had some evidence there was something at La Romana. So I think that we would still have focused on La Romana as the first target anyway. But Bravo would have been probably number two for sure. So
Which it is now, I guess.
yeah, so so the landowners, we have over 90 access agreements there. It's all privately owned land, and no different than anywhere else in the world. You have some farmers that it's not an issue for them. Others that they've invested a lot of money in the ground, and they don't necessarily want to mine there or don't understand exploration. So you have to go through a process sometimes. And look, we've been very careful that we don't want to make exceptions. So give one farmer something different to another farmer and then upset one of them in the process. So that means things can take longer to get there. But we'd rather take that approach than create let's say a less welcoming attitude, and that's proven to be good for us. I mean, yes, it means things getting access sometimes can take a bit longer, but that's just part of the thing. We're not here for 6 months. We're not here for 12 months. We're trying to make something that will be a mine. So you need to build relationships.
And since you gained access just a few months back, you have essentially gathered all of the baseline data. You had the Grav data previously, which was sort of one of the key things for the discovery, or before you drill tested La Romana, actually. But if you compare the baseline data that you have on La Romana now, in retrospect, of course, you've done a bunch of drilling and confirmed that there's a big deposit there, to what you see at Bravo now, what would you sort of characterize? Are there any key differences? How do they compare in scale now with the information that you have at this stage?
Yeah. So for La Romana, well, in both the areas, I mean, the initial gravity survey information that we have, the old Exxon data, came from a contour map. So we digitised a contour map to produce the gravity anomalies. So it wasn't the original raw data, if you like. So as with La Romana, what we did first of all when we got the ground was we did a couple of lines, just traverses of closest spaced gravity. So we knew the old Exxon survey was a 200 metre by 200 metre survey. We went down to two lines of 50 metre with 50 metre stations. So just to confirm the position of the gravity anomaly. And we did a line of IP just to give us a sense of, is there something at depth that coincides with the gravity anomaly. And then we drilled. That's all we did. We drilled two holes and both holes hit copper. Hole number two was, hit the 25 metres or whatever, 1.5% copper. And away we went. And we've continued to hit copper ever since. So we didn't do anything else. We didn't have access to the farm where the small old Roman mine workings were at that point. The area is all covered with soil. There were a couple of small windows of rock, but not much. So all we had to go by was the scale of the anomaly using a combination of our own gravity geophysics and the early Exxon data. And as the drilling is showing, there's a pretty good correlation of the mineralisation with that gravity anomaly. So it's proven pretty effective. Now, after that, after we made those discovery holes, we did a detailed survey and we completed of gravity over the entire area. We did a detailed IP survey, etc. And we've flown the entire area with a helicopter electromagnetic survey. So we only completed that in 2022. So when we've gone to Bravo, firstly, there's no rock sticking out of the ground. We had the gravity anomaly from the old Exxon information, but that's it. So we've gone and now covered the entire gravity anomaly with detailed 50 by 50 metre gravity survey, confirmed and better delineated the gravity anomaly. So it's we know where the peaks of it are, etc. We don't know very well what the cover thickness is and how that varies. Until we start doing some drilling, we won't know that. So you can only go so far with modelling that. But in terms of modelling it, it looks pretty similar to La Romana. So the scale of it could even be bigger. I mean, the gravity anomaly is 2 kilometres by 1.7 kilometres, something like that. But I think what was interesting, we didn't have this information at La Romana. We hadn't covered the area with soil geochemistry. So now we've done that at Bravo. And part of the thing was because it's a post-mineral sediment, by that, it's a much younger sediment that covers it, you might not get any response at all. So when we did the soil geochemistry survey over Bravo, it was pretty encouraging that we got this sort of lead zinc soil anomaly, and where we did a couple of lines where we assayed for silver as well, getting 5 or 6 grams per tonne silver in the soil, which is anomalous, quite anomalous for a soil. Very bang on coincident with the gravity anomaly. That was pretty positive for us. And then add to that, with the helicopter electromagnetic survey information, we can also see a low resistivity or potential conductor anomaly coincident with the gravity feature as well at depth. So 3 indicators, just 1 kilometre from east of La Romana. It's pretty obvious that this is why the priority of that target over everything else is it's right at the top. There's a good drill hole there. Finding another deposit right there is the sort of thing that could really ignite the share price. But more importantly, could double or whatever the potential resource that we're looking at in that area.
So how does the soil compare over La Romana to Bravo? Because you're seeing the zinc and lead anomalous at surface. You're not seeing any ore grade zinc and lead at La Romana. Maybe that will change at Bravo. It sort of depends on how deep it's going to be. But does the soils indicate similar shallowness at Bravo to La Romana? Or could the soil strength be an indicator in that respect?
Yeah, so we do have a little bit of copper both at Bravo and over La Romana in the soils. But similarly, we also have a lead and zinc response, more lead actually in the soils over both those targets. But it's much bigger and perhaps stronger, if you like, in some extent over Bravo. So that's sort of interesting because it's a bigger anomaly from what we've seen. We haven't covered all of the area around La Romana, but we are going to do more of it because we'd already found it. Before we did the soil geochemistry at La Romana, in contrast to Bravo, now that we know that there is a response. It's looking pretty good to us.
Yeah, it's too early to say, I guess. But
just to clarify, Gordon, part of the reason we did that soil geochemistry, one, it's very cheap because we use a portable XRF and pretty quick to do. We don't have to wait for the laboratories, although we do some laboratory tests, etc. But we had done some soil geochemistry over La Romana and saw that there was a response. So that was sort of encouraging that we could get a response on a post-mineral cover over La Romana. So let's try it over Bravo. It seems, well, of course we don't know what the source of that is, of that lead zinc soil, silver soil anomaly is, but it's pretty interesting that it's not just anywhere, it's actually coincident with the gravity, which is what you want it to be. So, and look, just on that, just to get a few questions. Well, it's a lead zinc soil anomaly. Aren't you looking for copper?
We know the VMS sort of it's more exhalative, so it's further up, probably has been eroded, and you have the remains in the soil. So maybe you'll see zinc lead. Maybe you'll see it at Bravo. You don't see that in ore grade in La Romana, but who knows? But for me, the most important thing is to highlight that so far, both the gravity and the soils look to be larger and stronger at Bravo compared to La Romana, and we're in a VMS region cluster here, so we know that they come in pairs or in clusters, even multiple deposits, can be 10, and so on. And to my understanding as well is that you usually have a couple of so-called pearls within the cluster, so a couple that are quite a bit stronger than the others. And who knows if La Romana is that, or if Bravo is one of the pearls waiting to be found. And I think that's the very compelling
Yeah,
portion in the story now for you guys. It's time to test this second deposit, which is potentially even greater than La Romana.
yeah.
Um,
We,
I guess I just want to touch on the IP quickly. So you said that IP has been delayed. To
it's
what
not delayed. It's
extent, and
going.
what's the implication?
No, it's not. It's not delayed. It's just going slower than we would have liked because of the ground, as you saw in the photograph. It's flat. It's covered with a sort of clay soil. So when that gets
Yeah.
wet, it gets very boggy and messy. So you don't want to create a big mess, over the farmer's property by driving around in the mud. So and some of the rain's been pretty heavy. So that's what I mean. It's not been. Haven't delayed the survey. The survey's going on. I'm not sure how we've maybe completed two of
Yeah,
the.
but I mean, what I'm saying, the completion of the survey has effectively been delayed. So,
Yeah.
quite literally, what's the new expected timeline to have it complete and analyzed?
Yeah, well, if things dry up, things should go pretty quick. 2 to 3 weeks, I would hope. If things
Right.
if things go quickly, at the outside, we maybe it's a little bit longer. That's why I'm sort of my hope was to get a drill rig on there before the end of the year. We're still trying to do that, and we'll give it a best shot to
I
do it.
mean, there's no seasonality here. So, I mean, you can put it on as soon as you have the data and you're ready to drill, and you
Yeah.
can put it on in
Well,
first of January or
apart from
second
the
of January.
rain and and the other
Yeah.
consideration is crops, but we'll deal with that. So, you,
What's the implication of that? So,
well, you don't.
is
Again,
that a
if
hindrance
they're
or?
planting or harvesting the crops, you don't want to be just driving in there and driving over the sunflower when they're about to harvest, for example. Or in this instance, they'll be seeding soon, but we don't. Again, we're not anticipating any delays because of that. And in this instance, it's more the rain at the moment that's the issue.
Okay. I think you mentioned we need to cover this quickly. I guess you mentioned that you're bidding at some new ground to expand Escacena essentially. Then,
Yes.
what would be just give people a sense of, I mean, how much you're willing to spend in such bids because you don't have unlimited cash. We established
They're
you
not
have
a
a
cash. They're not cash bids.
not cash bids.
No, no. They're work.
Okay.
Yeah, they're work programs. You have to satisfy certain, expertise, etc. So it's not a cash bid.
Good to clarify. I think that's important to clarify. Um, and I think I also want to sort of ask generally. I mean, you have multiple. You just with the baseline data in terms of the geophysics, the graph specifically, has correlated very well with La Romana. And when you look at the broader Escacena project, you have, I mean, 8 to 10 of these things popping up
Yeah,
within suitable sort of one plant range, so to speak, from La Romana. Bravo being one of the largest one, if you look at the
yeah.
graph and probably soils as well at this stage. What's the thesis? I mean, in the next year specifically, do you think any more of them will be tagged or tested in that regard? Uh,
Yes,
could you speak to the strategy there, and which ones
yes.
would you
Yeah.
favor?
So again, I think what we really want to do, because we want to make sure we best deploy our cash where it can add the most value. So, and we want to be very focused on with that spending. If we just start to go and test randomly 10 targets, I don't think that's the best use of investors' money. So we really put a lot of effort into trying to pick exactly where we want to every drill hole. Um, so, so we're just focused, as I say, at this stage, the La Romana delineation drilling, if you like, because that's clearly important to come out with a resource at some price and help sort of underpin the value of the company better. But secondly, to grow to be that bigger size target that we've got in mind, the ambitious side of things, the things that will multiply the share price, we recognise that making another discovery is really important. So, huge value can be created from exploration on a new target. So, Bravo's the number one at this stage. There are at least 6 that we could go and drill tomorrow. But we're not going to just go off and do this. Cañada Honda, for example, we see the size potential there, but it's a much deeper target. For one hole there, I can drill 3 or 4 at La Romana or perhaps at Bravo. We don't know exactly how deep that will ultimately be, but the indications are it could be shallow, but we'll see. So there are some targets, if you like, satellites that are very close to La Romana. Like there's one we call Cortico, just to the west of La Romana. I could see us putting a couple of holes into that at some point. There's another one just to the north. We're talking, again, kilometre to the west. Yeah, pretty close. Something that could make a difference pretty quickly in terms of resource. So there are a couple of other targets like that I can easily see us putting a couple of 2 or 3 carefully placed drill holes to see if we can snare some another discovery or some additional resources to add to what we've got at La Romana.
Yeah. So I think that's very good, and I think we need to have the discussion on sort of wider thinking in terms of use of proceeds for Escacena, and we'll talk about Carmenes briefly, but the bulk of the spend is certainly going into Bravo and La Romana, and to build up a VMS cluster that is attractive for one of these credible companies that are active in the region to acquire. Yes, there might not be too many alternatives, but obviously what they've seen so far is not good enough to make them act decisively and quickly. So question is, what is required and how do we get there as quickly as possible? That's the...
Yeah, I disagree with the conclusion they've gone for, mate. Look...
well, it's a fact. I mean, it's not happened yet. So
no, it hasn't.
That's a fact.
It's not necessarily for lack of interest, is what I'm saying. Is we have confidentiality agreements with a number of companies. We know that we're being followed very closely.
That's true, but I mean, that sort of proves my point. They're aware of what you're doing, but they have not acted. It's inarguable that they have not acted yet. So they're waiting for you guys to get to some point where they feel like they need to act, otherwise some competitor might act before them. So that they are not. You're not quite there yet, right?
Well, maybe for some, Gorm. But remember, Grupo Mexico haven't got their permit yet to commence construction on their first, which will be their first mine in Europe. Yeah, they put 20 or 30 million euros into the feasibility study. We wouldn't expect to do much with them until they get that permit. But we do know that they are exploring. They're interested in the area because of they participate at least one of the public bid areas that we're competing with them on that area. So
yes.
Okay. So I think that's not lack of interest. That's just they have.
That's not at all. That's not at all the point. I mean, they would be fools not to be interested, and they're not fools. But they are also wise to. I think the market knows quite well what's going on. Generally speaking, it sniffs out issues and so on. And I think that these companies also have a pretty good sense that they are not forced to act quickly right now. So what Pine Global needs to do is to get to that position as soon as possible, and that's sort of how would you characterize doing that in the coming 12 months?
Look, I disagree with a bit of what you said there, but I know where you're going with that. But I think for them, it's very look. We have a very good relationship with the Grupo Mexico or Minera Australia's people, so we know they've told us they know what we're doing, but until they get their permit. If they don't get that, for example, are they going to stay in Spain? Maybe not. They're a mining company. They've come in. This will be, as I say, their first mine in the area. So that is a pretty key threshold point for them. So I say, when they get that permit, that's a game on, is what I say. Okay? So the other one, of course, First Quantum, the mine's up for sale. So I can't sort of say what discussions we might have had with them, but that's in a different scenario. So waiting for the outcome of who's going to be the new owner of Las Cruces. Again, that's not necessarily because of anything we're doing, but that's that's another process that was triggered by something that happened in Panama. So whenever the new owner of Las Cruces is announced, that's also a pretty key moment for us, because whoever's
That's
going to do
true.
that, and one of
Yeah,
the potential buyers of that, in particular, from what we're hearing, without sort of saying because we don't know formally, I would say would be very interested in what we've got. But again, until they've got that transaction go through,
that's true, Tim. But I mean, and I do subscribe to that. But the point is, there's a range of quality and scale, and when you reach a certain thresholds, even things like this could be sort of skipped over. Even external actors could be interested in stepping in and so on. So,
okay, so there's a
point being,
yeah.
you can only control what you can control within the company. We should as quickly, or you should as quickly as possible, make the cluster of deposits as attractive as possible, right?
Yeah,
And these things probably will happen in your favor. But
yeah.
you have Sandfire. If this was a super clear-cut case at this point, maybe they would have made their move already. I mean, point being is that the thing that we can control within the company, right, is to make the cluster as attractive as possible as soon as possible. So my question is, what do you think at this stage is the strategy of doing that? Looking at the share price, and we need to be just realistic about this and discuss it openly, it's not the strategy in the past 12 months. Certainly the market could have played a part, but the strategy in the last 12 to 18 months have been interpreted to be not correct by the market, just looking at the share price appreciation. So what's the pivot? What's the change to course correct?
Yeah, and I guess there's a few conclusions that you're drawing, but not necessarily everyone is.
Well, I mean,
anyway, but look, no, I think
the market is the market is clearly making a judgment. That's a fact.
Well, so I'll come to. So the strategy hasn't changed that much, to be honest. But what we want to do is get firstly. We want to get the message, sure the message is clearer and better, perhaps enunciated, so that there's no questions about it. We think that with what we've got today, and given the quality of the concentrates that we can show we can produce, this provides an optionality that not many companies have. So it means that what we've got right now would be something that could be attractive to the particularly the nearest producers, which is potentially Grupo as soon as they get going, and then Las Cruces. The next one is Atalaya. So why would they want our copper? Any amount of it. I mean, obviously we've got a fair chunk there now. It's because of they're dealing with deleterious metals, and they're producing, if it's a case of Grupo Mexia, they're copper producers, right? So we're within a conveyor belt distance of their mine. So, and same with Las Cruces. So we're not talking about long distance hauling for these things. That means for us. But so that's important, because it can be used as a blend, but also increase the quality of their concentrate and add more concentrate for the plant. So there's already something.
That's true, Tim. But I mean, we need to get back to what matters here, because at the end of the day, share price has to go up significantly for a transaction to be made, right?
Well, let me get to the strategy.
What is the market looking for?
So let me get to the strategy. So that's what we've got at the moment. And as I say, I believe based on the work we did up to a whole 150, we have something that could be a standalone mine today. If we want to compare, to be bigger, let's say more relevant, comparable to the size of some of the other bigger miners, we need to find a cluster of deposits. It's not going to come from one deposit. So I've set a target of 100 million tonnes of potentially commercially viable mineralisation. That would make us more than relevant. If we're successful with our exploration, if we make another discovery, if La Romana, I don't know, I'm not inside the ruins of the next nearest producers, which Atalaya and First Quantum, but at some point there probably is a size threshold which will be well, they must have us. So
what do you think that is?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think
What's your suspicion on it?
well, I think if we start getting to resource of 50 million tons plus, I think that's getting relevant. I mean, some of those mines started with less than that.
And so I think here we're getting to the crux of
I mean,
things that I want
I'm
to.
trying just. I mean, this is you know educated guess work, but of course they have their own criteria. But that's what I think would start to make things more okay. No, this is a
Yeah.
size we want to have that in our pocket as well. Um, so I think that's why the exploration element, testing other targets is part of our strategy. Our strategy first, grow La Romana. It will grow materially, I believe, based on the work we've done so far. Secondly, is to find something else. And if we are successful
Yes.
with both those elements and test some others as well, we get the more we find here, the more successful we are at one either being a standalone operation. If we get 100 million tonnes, we could be a standalone mine by ourselves. We don't need to be trucking or conveyor belting ore to anywhere else. That's of a scale which would support its own plant and tailings and all the rest of it. It's a longer term, a longer project than just simply a quarry where you're just trucking or conveyor belting ore to one of
Okay.
the
So
mines. So if we're successful
I
with that,
think
it gives us the options
yeah.
one, developing it ourselves, or secondly, that if we're successful in doing it, do I think that we will be the miner? Probably not, given the size of some of the other
But
neighbours.
all of this is certainly objectively true, but the question is the path of getting there. And I think, from my interpretation, that's probably what needs to change. And when I mentioned potential weakness by having too much major experience, I think there could be an overemphasis on data density from the market's point of view, and I also think
On data,
potentially from the major's point of view.
on
That,
data,
I mean, you have a limited amount of capital, so you need to step out a bit more aggressively and prove up scale faster. Because if you go at the same pace as you've done with La Romana, I think it might be a bit too cost intensive, in my interpretation at least. Could you just speak to that? What your thinking is?
yeah, well, I'll disagree with you on that again, Gorm. I've been in the industry for 40 years, so not all of that's been with big companies. So, and I've made a number of discoveries. So I think with the team I've got, it's not all big company. It's not all just relied on big company experience. So I think one of the things that investors like about us is they've seen the depth of experience that we've got, and we've got a track record of making discoveries. So I don't believe we're certainly not trying to just collect information for the sake of collecting information. We collect information to try and make our exploration drilling the most effective, cost effective, and most give us the best opportunity for success. So that's where the experience comes. We're not just sort of randomly throwing drill holes into target, collecting information for the sake of
No, I
collecting
mean,
information.
listen, Tim. There is no suggestions as to that, but you have to look at the cold hard facts of the judgment from the market, and I want you to address this clearly for
Yeah.
people now, because
Well, I'm
the
trying
market
to.
has strongly disagreed with the outcome to this point, right? So how do you change the perception? That's
Well,
I think
so,
very important to address clearly.
yeah, no, and I'm glad you're asking because what we're trying firstly is trying to get that messaging really clear. What are we trying to do here? So what's our objective and what's our focus? How are we going to get there? So to get to the resource, I've said we're not going to drill at the same density we have been drilling. We'll be stepping it out to get to inferred status. We think we need to do that to be able to demonstrate a resource that's bigger rather than just what we've got today. And I think we can bear in mind we only got access to half the target at La Romana a year ago. So, it's not been a long time. We've grown at 30% or whatever. Now, we can go. I could put 4 or 5 drill rigs on there tomorrow and have it all done within about 3 months, for example, 4 months or something like that, whatever. But is that if the market is not responding, why go at that pace? It's not been the market, not just for us, but for a whole suite of of junior copper explorers and not just copper across the board. They're having not seeing a response to good news. So that's why we slowed the number of drill rigs. We had 5 drill rigs turning at one stage. And the market has changed. We had our best response last year, or this year, to metallurgy news release, which was sort of interesting. So we're not going to be drilling at the same density. We haven't been as we're stepping to the west. But we're not going to drill it to measure and indicate. We're going to drill to infer. That's what I'm saying. So in terms of how we get there, it's again not spreading our resources all over the place, putting it where we think we can achieve the goal of getting to a much bigger scale. Baseline work on La Romana, testing our best target next, which is Bravo. And then we'll look at the next one. So we have a strong ranking and prioritisation program on all of the other targets. And as I said, there are at least another half a dozen that we can go and drill tomorrow. But let's see what results we get from La Romana, from Bravo, and then we'll look if we need to do a follow-up program on that. Obviously, if we have success on Bravo, we'll want to turn the drill rigs on, add drill rigs probably on that one pretty quickly, because I expect we will get a response to that. But if we hit on that, that will be a big news item for us. Obviously, hopefully a price catalyst.
Yeah. So I mean, the change in strategy is to increase the pace of proving scale. That would be the summarization.
Well, it's clarifying that we're after scale. We want scale. We want big.
But also concretely increasing the pace as previously of proving scale. Obviously, because that's what you're saying.
Yeah, well,
you've proven now 15, 20 million tons.
Yeah, we have tested a couple of other targets. Obviously, Cañada Honda, we're showing it's an encouraging target, but it's a more costly target to test. And in that instance, we have got drill holes that were stepped out 150 metres apart, 120 metres apart.
Yeah.
But
and also it's not the same operation as the VMS cluster that
I would still
La Romana and adjacent targets would be.
Cañada Honda would still fall within a cluster distance. Yeah, it's still close enough. It's only 4 kilometres away to the north.
It's underground, and metallurgy might be different, I guess.
We don't know. We haven't done any metallurgy. It's more copper gold. So there's no lead and zinc. So some of the other deposits, the complex ores as they call it in the Pyrite Belt, are more lead zinc with precious metals. This is more copper and gold, and we've also got some gold only mineralisation, which is a little bit different to anywhere else. So we don't know that one. Some of it could be open pit, but the bulk of the target, the bigger part of the target would be an underground target for sure. So that's why we're not racing the rigs over there to drill 3,000 metres on 6 drill holes, or whatever it may be, 4,000 metres or something, to drill those 6 drill holes on that just at this stage, because we see Bravo as a much lower cost but higher reward opportunity just at this stage.
Yeah, I mean that makes total sense. I think the key thing that I want to convey is just the pace of proving scale with the La Romana adjacent deposits, because that is what's currently underpinning the valuation and what is considered to be transactable for the company, I think, for market perception. So key is improving out scale there. Could we get a bit more into detail of when you sort of want to see the initial 5, 6, 7 holes at Bravo to be completed? Because now, slight delay, not material in the IP, it's fine. But when do you expect to have the first leg of the program wrapped up?
Well, if you haven't got the rig turning by the end of the year, it'll be January. Yeah, so drill those holes with 3 to 5 is what we're saying, right? Not 5 to 7, but 3 to 5 holes is what we're anticipating. Yeah, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves completely on the geophysics, but I expect we'd have those completed, 2 months, certainly by March next year, and obviously we'll have results along the way.
Okay, and
Yeah, we can drill a
now it
hole.
sounds like, I mean, you're
We
going
could
to.
drill a hole. We could drill a hole a week, so it could be done by February.
But I mean, how deep are you coloring these holes to be? Because it sounds to me like, I mean, obviously you're moving the platform and stuff like this, but if the
Yeah.
advance rate actually is 40, 50
Well,
meters,
I've earmarked
it shouldn't be
1,500
that long.
meters. I've earmarked 1,500 meters for that. It may vary a bit. That's why we're doing the IP work, because we just to give us some idea, some better depth and dip angles and things like that, to give us some better, uh, enable us to better position the drill holes.
Yeah.
So actually, it might be a mix of
Okay.
a couple of deeper holes and a couple of shallower holes in the first instance. So what we'll try and do is test different geophysics responses as well as we go, because the first pass on these things is often to try and give you some geology information. Hopefully, you get some indicators like alteration or whatever, and then to be able to collect rock density information. So you put that into your model, and then you try and say, well, have I explained that gravity anomaly or not? And
Yes.
and that way you can say, okay, if you've got nothing, do you move on, or is it just that the target's different, it's deeper? For example, Neves Corvo, the first hole at Neves Corvo got nothing, zero. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's everyone is familiar with
yeah,
the nature of it's reactive.
yeah,
Each hole informs the next, and so on.
yeah.
So, yeah,
So I want to best position those that using techniques that we've been using that work to help us identify the mineralisation, and then we'll take it from there. But we can at La Romana we were drilling a hole a week easily.
yeah. And once presuming that you're into something, and you're starting getting the hang of initially what's going on at Bravo, you're into Min, and you feel like you can start. I would hope and I would assume, just inferring from what you communicated with proving out scale, is to step out as much as you be a bit more aggressive in the stepping out once you're into things at Bravo. Is that fair to say,
Yeah,
compared to say La
I
Romana
mean,
initially?
yes. I mean, remember VMS deposits are quite compact deposit ore bodies. You can pack a lot
True.
within a 400, 500 metre distance. So, in fact, some of the highest grade portions of Neves Corvo are only 200 metre by 200 metres. So, you're not talking huge footprints for these sorts of things. So, you're not going to drill it like a porphyry and step out 300 metres.
No.
Okay, so you just decrease your chances of getting anything. It's not really helping you. So we use some other tools like downhole electromagnetics to help if you see something, if it's off hole or if it gives you some extensions. Sometimes that gives you something that could be 200 or 300 metres away, which was the case at La Romana. We did a downhole EM survey in hole number 1, and we saw something off hole off to the east. Eventually we went and drilled that, and we hit massive chalcopyrite about 300 metres or 400 metres to the northeast, almost exactly where it was predicted by the downhole electromagnetics. So that was hole number 14. So it wasn't a top priority to go and drill that. It was a deeper intercept, but the techniques work. So where geophysics gives you something to go for out there, we'll go and do it. We'll go and test it.
Yeah. But so it sounds to me like you're going to put La Romana, start that probably before year end, initiate that program. It's going to take quite a while for that rig, and then you're going to bring the second rig in as soon as Bravo is ready, and let that rig be there.
Well,
And then depending on what you see from those 5-6 initial holes, either you'll elect to expand that program. That's the hope and expectation, I would say, or you would move it over to Bravo to assist in completing whatever you're doing there. Is that a fair initial characterization?
Yeah, look, if we hit on Bravo, yeah, we'll want to add drill rigs, etc. I would think we'd want to turn the gas up on that one pretty quickly because it depends on what result we get. But that would be, let's say we have the success like we saw at La Romana, which is uncommon. Then I could easily see us adding 2 or 3 drill rigs to something like that pretty quickly. Maybe not instantly, but pretty quickly, and still continue the work at La Romana. But that would continue. I think that's still important because that's the most advanced project. But
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be initiated so you get to that
yeah,
resource update stage or initial resource stage by initially sort of halfway through next year.
yeah,
Uh, I guess if we just think about that, so you're allocating 1.5 million Canadian or something like this to get to that stage for La Romana,
yeah,
and then you have sort of a 3 million run rate G&A per year or something like this. So it depends on sort of comfortability on what you want to have in the bank before financing next time and so on. But say that you have 4 or 5 million Canadian to deploy into the ground in the coming 12 months, realistically, 4.5. You're spending 1.5 at La Romana, and you're initially committing like a 500,000 at Bravo to start, but the hope is to be able to allocate more. But in an aggressive scenario, say probably in Q1 next year, you're hitting and you're into something you want to increase.
yeah.
You're able to do that without refinancing. With the current financial position, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, we've got the flexibility. That's why I don't want to just burn off the money on other things. I want to have money there to be able to follow up, at least do a stage of follow up at Bravo and
Yeah,
some. And that's with the benefit of the extra money we raised this time, we can do that. So of course, if things go well, and the share price starts to track on, we've got warrants out there. If we hit 30 cents, we've got potentially 9 million to come in from those warrants. And with this
yeah,
there's an accelerate. It's a big, it seems like a long way away, but we went very quickly from 10 cents or whatever it was, or less than that, to 60 cents at La Romana. Within 40 holes, we were at, with under 50 holes, we went to 88 cents. So that's the sort of success we
yeah.
can have.
And that's why we're speaking now, because now you're again at this low valuation. You've been able to finance successfully, and I think you have a very compelling case to answer the big question, which is, can you get to the critical scale?
Yeah.
And I think Bravo is the compelling target to do that, and it's going to be tested very imminently. So it's certainly extremely interesting. I guess
it's not the only one, Gorm.
Yeah.
There are some others I could have shown you that look really compelling as well. So it's but that Bravo is so obvious, and given its location, etc., and the way things have lined up, we just have to drill it, ahead of everything else. So.
It's the best one with the current information you have.
But there's some others.
Yeah.
There's some other very good-looking targets as well that that we like a lot. So, but Bravo's the top one. Again, we can't test them all straight away. We'll get to them, but Bravo's it for the moment. But it's exploration.
And I guess we need to. And I think we could speak a bit more about Canada Honda. Yeah, we know how it works. And I think we could speak more about Canada Honda. I think you covered the conceptual target, but since it's not going to be tested immediately, we'll leave that for future discussions once it's time to get back to test that again, I think. We need to speak about Carmenes, though, a bit more in depth. I would characterize that as the sort of the wild card, because with the current valuation, if you hit something good, if it's a good intercept or a couple of good intercepts there, sufficient to re-rate the company. So we certainly need to speak about it. I think just to start, can you talk about the history of that package? How did you pick it up? Why has no one really worked it well previously, and what opportunity did you see there with what data existed and so on?
Yeah, so it was held by a state-owned, sort of quasi-state-owned exploration company in Lyon, who was set up to promote mining and exploration in the region. They had the ground for 10, 12 years or something like that, maybe longer. But they had a suite of, 15 projects in different parts of that region. So they had done some sampling, some work. I guess not the ideas. Some of the exploration work they did was good, but some of it was not really that effective, I thought. So, but why they didn't go and just drill underneath those breccia pipes or do more work on those is I really don't understand why they didn't do it. So we know one of the geologists that was with that company joined our team and is a very good geologist, and he was always very excited about the target, and we've been the sampling work we're doing at the moment, it's really confirming the potential of that target. Yeah, yes, it's opportunistic. It is a bit of a wild card, but just like we see, how do we address the share price? How do we address the picture for Pan Global? Getting a resource out, making another discovery in that area, adding to the resource overall, are really important. The third element could be that if we make another discovery on something else, that brings another set of eyes to the company. Now, we'll see what happens. But La Romana, the Escacena project, was an opportunity that came along. We grabbed it because I knew the area, and we were fortunate with the first hole there. Well, let's see what happens at Carmenes. But why it hadn't been drilled, I guess maybe it comes down to the ownership, or people didn't recognise it, didn't understand it. I don't know, but certainly being in the hands of this sort of state-owned company for such a long period of time meant that progress was slow.
And as we saw, both these breccia pipes or conceptual breccia pipes were mined, I think, between the two world wars, if I recall correctly from past
about
conversations.
100 years ago. I think they started actually in the 1800s, so before First World War. There were some attempts to restart at one stage, and then the Spanish Civil War came along and stopped things. There were a couple of other attempts, from what I understand, but they couldn't deal with the water at the Profunda mine, the depth. There was flooding in the lower levels, so they needed to de-water that. So they didn't have the technology. And I think the other thing, it was owned by different people, different parts. One pipe was owned by one group, the other pipe was owned by somebody else. It wasn't all one piece of land in those early days. But yeah, it was an old mine, but important at that in its day. I think it was Spain's biggest cobalt mine at one point. And to have a smelter there to produce the two concentrates and so on, it was a decent mine 100 years ago.
So do you have any analogous deposits that you were thinking of when you're in the early stages? You're thinking of how to attack this cluster of potential breccia pipes, or could you characterize that?
Yeah, they're sort of pipe-like bodies. They're unusual metal combinations. Copper, cobalt, nickel, plus precious metals. We're even seeing some PGEs, a little bit of uranium here and there as well, but not nothing to be get excited about or anything. But so analogues, I worked on a similar type of breccia pipe in northern Australia, not as high grade, and they look to be clusters of them. I think eventually over the years people have found about 70 pipes in that sort of broader area. But there's some in the US and Arizona, for example. Again, these sort of multi-metal breccia pipes. But perhaps one of the better analogues is the Sumeb mine in Africa, Namibia. So that was 30 million tonnes plus at 4.5% copper, plus a whole suite of other metals. It went from surface to 1.5 kilometres depth. So that's probably the best analogue I can think of at the moment.
And what I mean, obviously there were historical mining here.
Yeah.
I presume that the records might not be that great, but can you outline what information you have currently? You've taken some samples. What do you know right now? And
so there was some historical. There is some historical sort of production information, but you can't really rely on it that much. We've got some concentrate grades. Again, it was very hard to try and resolve what it is that they're measuring, how they came up with that. But I forgot what the grades were. But they were mining, from what it seems, let's say multi-percent material. it seemed from the two concentrates they were producing, it was a copper concentrate and a cobalt concentrate. Both of those had nickel in them, but they didn't. But they couldn't separate the nickel, I guess, to make that into a separate concentrate. So they didn't have the technology or whatever. So, but other than that, there's no evidence that they looked at or even assayed for precious metals, which is something you hear about quite a bit. But we're finding, particularly at Providencia, quite interesting gold numbers. Grams of gold in rock samples at surface. So yeah, it's a really intriguing project, and the targets, the dimensions of the breccias here could be pretty attractive as well. So it could be 50 metres wide, for example. In fact, at Providencia, we're seeing whether it's two pipes next to each other or whatever it is, but it looks like over 150 metres by 100 metres is the target area broadly. That's the footprint at surface. So if these things continue at surface, at depth they can have quite big depth extent. That's only
you guys
120 metres. That's only had mining down to 120 metres.
Yeah,
I went underground there a couple of months ago, and you go underground, and what you see is, even at the ends of the mine workings, you're still in mineralisation. It's pretty impressive in every direction, up, above, below, on all the walls. It's something.
You're in the breccia pipe. I mean, it's just everywhere within the pipe.
Yeah.
So can you just let me know what sort of information you have? I mean, obviously you have some historical information. You collect some samples underground, on surface. Have you done soil grids to look for new pipes?
Yes.
Do you have geophysics?
Yeah.
What more do you have?
So we picked a sort of a segment of the 5,700 hectares we've got, and we've covered that with a soil sampling program, soil grid, over 1,000 samples, and then we've been infilling over selected areas, and some of those selected areas we're sending the samples to the laboratory where we're getting gold assays as well, so which you can't get from the handheld. So we're at that stage now where we're defining anomalies. We've clearly got a strong anomaly at the two main breccia pipe areas, but we've also been able to extend those anomalies beyond and upslope and away from the effect of the mine working. So it's really, really interesting. So we've completed a lot of that. We've still got some infill sampling and closer space sampling over some of those targets. And then we'll look to step out beyond that. But that soil geochemistry program is not only better defining the potential in and around the two main targets, but it's identifying additional anomalies nearby that could represent additional breccia pipes. So in addition to that, we've been doing some further underground mine sampling, so getting down there. We had some people with ropes and all the rest of it, getting down into the lower levels of the Profunda mine in particular, where we didn't have many samples to go for. So we're waiting for the results of that underground sampling. We've also found a couple of other small tunnels that we've gone in, and we've been channel sampling in those as well. So and also trenching. So over the top of these soil anomalies, we've got some sort of shallow trenches going in. So a lot of work, but it's geologists' time with a handheld instrument for a lot of the geochemistry, and so it's not been an expensive program at this stage. You've got to pay for to have geologists pay their wages anyway, but it's a low cost program.
Yeah, it starts quite humbly, and then it can get really quite quickly with a couple of drill holes. And so can you just characterize what you're aiming to do? Because this is something that's going to be drilled very imminently.
Yeah,
and you can set a timeline for it.
Yeah, so
and what you're aiming to do.
Yeah, so the target that we want to test first is the Providencia target. It's the one that's most advanced. We already have more underground sampling there. We've covered a lot of surface geochemistry, detailed mapping over that sort of thing, and we have some old sampling and mapping from the state-owned companies' work as well. So we can already position 2 drill holes. Now we're looking at adding a third to test some of the geochemistry that we're finding at surface. Yeah, so perhaps 3 drill holes, less than 500 metres in total. And we'll do.
So what would those 3 look like if you explain the 3? What are the goals?
Yeah, so the goals are to firstly get a feel for what's the mineralisation, the width of it, and so on, the continuity and distribution. Get a good look at it from a continuous drill core through the pipe. Try to avoid the mine workings. And then a second hole is beneath that to see if it beneath the mine workings to see if it's continuing. And then we have looking at a third hole, shallow hole, which would be to test some of the geochemistry that where we're seeing some sort of attractive multi-metal anomalies just to the side of it.
Okay, so I mean,
the goal is to see, look, what would good look like here? We come out with a few tens of meters running multi% metal, and that would be a pretty attractive outcome in the first year.
Right. So it's to get a sense of what this, if it's interesting to continue to allocate capital here,
Yeah.
and I think it's worthwhile exercise. What is the expected spend on Carmenes? As we know now, you might upsize if it's very successful. Who knows? But at the current stage, what are you planning to spend, and when will the program be started?
Yeah, we're probably looking at certainly under $500,000, probably 300,000 or something like that at the very most.
Right. And you're waiting for permitting right now to be able to commence drilling. What's the range of timeline outcome? Of course, it's difficult to predict, but it should be quite soon, to my understanding. What do you think is realistic?
Yeah, we are permitted to drill from the government perspective. There's a local council permit you need as well, so we're just waiting for that. So we expect that it could be this week. In which case we'll look to try and get a drill rig up there. Yeah. Straight away, pretty much.
Okay, so in all likelihood, this program will be done before year end because it's just a couple of holes and they're very shallow.
Yeah, so it's just as soon as we can get the drill rig up there, we'll do that.
Yeah. And do you have because it's a small program, do you have the possibility of expanding that with a contractor? What's the terms? And do you think that's on the table to add a couple of more holes?
Yeah,
it's not very expensive, especially if
that won't be an issue. But I think more that that area gets a lot of snow. Can get a lot of snow. It's in the Cantabrian Mountains, so we'll run into the snow at some point. I mean, we could continue to drill when it's snowing, but I think in the first instance, let's get the results of those first holes, and let's see where we go from there.
Okay. And then, I mean, now I think we've clarified what's going to happen in the coming year quite precisely and what the strategy is, where the company's at currently. We've done a good job with that. But if we just zoom out, where would you like to see Pan Global as a final sort of thing to tie up the conversation in 3 years from now? What's a successful outcome for Pan Global in 3 years?
Yeah, so what does success look like for us? To get the share price back, get momentum back to the share price, get us back over the 60 cents, and hopefully get us up to $1 or so. That would be the hope. And I think how can we get the share price moving again? It's getting the resource, getting and showing another discovery, so we're getting that scale at the Escacena project. If we have success on something else, that could also bring new eyes to the company and bring more volume and more, let's say, increase the share price by adding another opportunity on something that's pretty low cost at this stage, but could be very high reward if it's as good as we hope it will be at the Carmenes project. So I think if in 2 years' time or 12 months' time we've got a resource out, we've shown potential to add to that meaningfully, then I think we'll see a good potential that we'll have some of the bigger companies knocking on our door pretty quickly. So that would be, if we're successful in our growth plan, the target 100 million tonnes of commercially viable material, even if we don't even get there, I think if it's clear that we could get there, then I could see someone wanting to have a run at us, whether it's acquire us, but certainly more projects, more offers to do something with us on the ground.